We do lot of research on diseases, but we do not do any research on good health.
Hello, I'm Hazel Henderson. Welcome to Worth Quoting, a program sponsored by Florida Community College at Jacksonville. Today we're going to get into the subject of health, and we're going to talk about healthy people and healthy societies. And considering that healthcare is almost at the top of the issue list in the USA today, I think that this is very appropriate. The president's wife, Hillary Clinton, has her task force. We have a situation where 37 million Americans have no health insurance. And one of the things that really worries me is that most of the discussion of healthcare in the United States and what to do about it seems to revolve around throwing more money at the problem. And I have two guests who are very knowledgeable in this area. Dr. Frank Bracho from Venezuela, who's just come back from being their ambassador in India. And he's a very unusual man who's also written, apart from other books, a cookbook, a best-selling cookbook in Venezuela on natural foods. And my other guest is Dr. Keshava Bhat, who is originally from India, and he is a professor of botany, and he has also written books on healthy diets and the way to develop a healthy lifestyle. And so I couldn't imagine two better guests to discuss the American healthcare system with, as well as the whole issue of health everywhere in the world. So I think that the question that we want to open up with is the whole idea, really, of who is responsible for healthcare. And I'm one of those Americans, one of those 37 million Americans that does not have health insurance. I have not had health insurance for 20 years. Instead, I have a sort of little fund that I keep aside for if I get sick. Now, this is beyond the pale for most Americans, and yet what it did for me is something that I know my guests are very interested in.
You're doing it out of your own choice.
I did it out of my own
to
choice, and it made me feel very responsible for having a better diet and exercising. And so why don't you weigh in on this whole thing? What is your philosophy for health?
Well, health, it is not a simple entity. It's a very complex aspect. We have to consider the physical health, mental health, and spiritual health. We have no time to consider even our physical health. How are we going to consider other health problems? In fact, I attended the meeting of WHO and FAO at Rome last December on nutrition and health. There also the discussion was based mainly on these themes. So I would suggest that the responsibility so far, one person is pushing his or her responsibility on health, either on the government or on the doctors or any other professionals, health professionals I mean. But nobody has thought of the problem responsibility lies on individuals themselves. That we have never considered. In other words, prevention is better than crying later on. So that portion we have not yet brought into light. More attention should be given to prevention.
Yes, and what does that mean for you? Education for people, how do you see?
It's an integrated aspect. You should orient without any prejudice, we should orient the people regarding the food habits, living habits, how to avoid health hazards in the future. But we do not have any such educational means so far.
It would be much cheaper, wouldn't it, than treating
Certainly.
people after they get sick?
We do lot of research on diseases, but we do not do any research on good health.
That's what we need to focus on.
That's the problem.
And what do you think, Dr. Bracho?
Well, in fact, to complement on your two interventions and going back to what you said at the beginning by way of introduction, I think there's not amount of insurance that is going to protect you against, mismanagement of self-responsibility, against tendencies to commit suicide, right? Which is what many people are up to, in terms of the unconscious way they live, in terms of taking responsibility for their own health. Health, being the result of your own mindfulness about how to live, how you eat, the kind of environment you stick around. Prevention, in few words. I think we have had enough experience already with costly systems, high-tech systems, not only in America, but worldwide. And we have seen where they have led. They have led to very costly machinery, very costly bureaucracies, the patient being neglected, a breakdown in the end. There has not been a lack of material resources. In Venezuela, my own country, we have had the highest per capita expenditure on health in Latin America. Yet we lag behind so many other countries in the region in terms of basic health indicators. That tells you, that shows you, the limits of, the expenditure approach.
Yes.
And, one doesn't see enough discussion yet in the world in terms of switching to the preventive approach to health.
Yes. Well,
the holistic approach to health in the end, which is what amounts to.
As you may know, I know you do know, we in the U.S. spend about 14% of our gross national product on health. And what we really have is this high-tech system with insurance and hospitals and doctors and lots of equipment. And if some of that trickles down to the patients, it's great. But there's this enormous system which we know is unsustainable. It has to be restructured. And what worries me is that most of the discussion still is we have to throw more money at it. We somehow have to get these 37 million people all have to be insured, and maybe small businesses will have to pay insurance. I mean, for a lot of companies, little companies can't afford to pay these premiums. And so it seems to me there's nothing to do but just to unpack the whole thing and say, look, how do we shift the priorities to education, as you were saying, and prevention?
Well, take the case of food, no? I think, how many doctors you go and see tell you how important food is for your health? Very few.
Very few.
In fact, in the curriculum of doctors, in universities, they are taught very little on nutrition, if nothing, And this is really a betrayal of the roots of modern medicine, because Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, said, let your food be your medicine, and let your medicine be your food. Mm-hmm. So that's one major item, and, it doesn't take to be a great thinker to suspect that whatever you ingest, is bound to have, important repercussions on your health. We're ingesting today, we're ingesting about from 3,000 to 12,000, chemical additives into our food. This is the kind of denaturalized modern food we're consuming.
Just additives, not to say the pesticides and all of these other things.
All are included.
Yes. Well, we'll pick this up again in a minute, but I wanted to ask Dr. Bhat, I like your interest in the emotional and the spiritual side, because I think what happens is a lot of people get sick because they're disturbed and upset. And then if it's not treated, they don't have counseling or help, then it turns into a symptom, like a,
well,
stomach ulcer.
Precisely, that's a problem. The health is a complex system, I told you earlier. If you have more and more patients, more and more uh, sick people in the country, that doesn't make a country rich. That makes a country poorer because there are many sick people. What we require is healthy people.
Yes,
So,
But mind you, the gross national product goes up when more people get sick.
yes, that's,
Because you sell more medicines.
That's
So
right.
it's supposed to be good for the economy, but it's
That's
not
how
good for the
bad
people.
the scorecard is.
that's the problem. See, we go by the economic values, but we do not take into consideration human values. When we consider human values, not only the physical health, but mental and spiritual health, we have to concentrate.
Yeah.
Because of the negligence, we could say, or we do not have time, we get into a problem called stress, the anxiety.
I remember quoting in one of my books, in the U.S., even in 1980, stress was a $70 billion a year industry.
That's it.
The stress industry.
Precisely, because
Yeah.
you have fresh air, if at all you have, you don't know how to inhale good air and how to make use of the energy present in that air. There is no education regarding that.
And so breathing properly
That's a basic
as a
thing.
start.
But nobody teaches it.
And eating properly.
Fine.
So you have in your cookbook some ideas. Now you are a vegetarian. As a matter of fact, all three of us are vegetarians.
But we would go one step further. We will say we are not vegetarians. We eat natural food. That means vegetarians, they eat any vegetables, whereas we do not eat certain vegetables which may cause health hazards. For example, tomatoes, for example, soya bean, for example, coffee, for example, tobacco, all are vegetable products, but we do
Yes.
not consume such items. In that way, we take into consideration any item which causes damage to the human body, whether it is a physical health, mental health, or spiritual health, we keep it off. We do not use it at all.
Well,
That leaves you in the end with vegetables.
Yes, that's true, but that's
But,
fine.
But so the thing that is happening, though, to people in these industrialized societies is the cities are getting bigger and bigger, and people are in this rat race to try to get more money and to get ahead and buy more consumer products, so to keep up with the Joneses and all of this kind of thing. And so everybody is stressed. And mostly you are told on the television that you take a pill to relieve the stress, and then you take a pill to wake up in the morning, and then you take a pill to go to sleep at night. And so it's like
That's
not...
the old motto: for every ill, there is a pill.
Yes. So
now
it's
some people
not...
have changed it around, and they say for every pill, there is an ill.
There is an ill. And so it isn't surprising, is it, that we have this sort of addicted society, and that drugs are just simply one part of it.
That's what I was
Precisely,
referring to.
we have to change the concepts. The basic concepts will have to change. We have to come down to the earth. Instead of flying high in technology and other resources, we have to think right from the basics.
Yeah, I think the same way in America, you say there's no such a thing as a free lunch. You have to also acknowledge that there's no such a thing as a, God-given, somebody else given health.
Yes.
I mean, you are
yes.
responsible for your own health. If people don't have time to eat,
Yes.
literally, that's so.
Yes, the
You
eat
come
and
across so
run
many people
shops.
today that they tell you, I didn't have breakfast this morning because I was so busy, I had to get to work.
Yes.
Then they get sick.
I would add some more thing. Not only we are responsible for our own health, but also health of our descendants. I would come even
For our
one step further.
descendants, yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
because imagine a pregnant woman consuming toxic substances, definitely her children will reflect the problem.
Oh, yes.
So then,
We see that. I mean, in the worst cases in the U.S. with crack, cocaine, and these
Yes.
poor little babies are
the problem.
born
Yeah.
addicted. But the thing is that people will say, well, these are social problems, and I can't live my life worrying about this when I'm subjected to all these social forces.
I agree.
I have to have more and more money because I have to work 2 jobs because I'm working at a minimum wage. And so we have to look at the whole system, don't we?
that's it. having more and more resources is not the solution. Our need should be less and less. So having more and more does not solve your problem.
The whole point is, Hazel, I think that you don't have to wait for the big macro change, you know, the big total societal revolution for you to do your own change.
That's right. We all
Within
have
whatever
to do
is within your reach, and there are many
Yes.
things people can do individually to improve their health, to
Yes.
improve the I
Exactly.
mean, I'm not excusing for lack of, you know, responsibility on the part of government. You know, on the
Right,
part
that
of,
the government has
on the
to be
part of-
responsible.
yes, they have to be
The
responsible.
drug
They can only
companies who
go,
do all this
you know,
advertising, they have to be
Right,
responsible. But
right.
we have to be responsible.
yes, on, you know, on our own, you know, interests, you know.
Yes,
That's that,
yes,
and people
yes.
are not doing that. Still, health is being viewed as someone else's problem, you know, the pills problem, the doctor's problems, and not my own problem, you know.
Yes,
One, one should do it out of conviction, not out of convenience.
Yes, yes, you have to really, you know, I must say something very funny. I was on a radio program about a week ago with a woman who has this show in Las Vegas, and I didn't know that she was a vegetarian and very concerned with health and with avoiding pesticides. And she said to me, she said, "What are we going to do about President Clinton going in and eating all of this junk food on TV and setting a bad example to the children?"
Well,
So
you
it does
know,
begin with all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's individual improvement. It's
Yes.
not, we cannot expect the world to change, then you change yourself. You start the change right from yourself, from within.
Yes.
Within, outside, not outside, within.
Yes. So this restructuring, there's going to have to be a lot of restructuring of healthcare systems in
Thinking.
every country. Now, do you think of any model of a country where there is a reasonably good health system? I mean, I grew up in England. We have a national health service in England, which everybody does get attention, but it's still very high tech, and it's still only crisis-oriented. They want to give you an operation.
Curative oriented or mechanical repair oriented.
The problem is just this. I would say it this way. The specialists become too much super specialized. They do not care for the entire body as a whole. They take their special field, they specialize in it, they do not mind giving pills or receiving drugs which may have adverse effect on some other part of the body. For example, if you go to a cardiologist, they will recommend some pills for the heart problem, but it will have adverse effect on the liver or kidney or head or stomach. That they are not worried. In that case, you have to go to another specialist for some other problem.
Yeah.
You should have considered the human body as a whole,
And that is
a
your
single unit.
approach to the people you treat.
Basic unit.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And you treat also their emotional.
Normally what we do is we recommend what to do in certain crises. That is true. But we take preventive steps to teach them good food, good lifestyle as a basic condition, and then, if necessary, complement with some natural remedies.
Like medicinal plants,
Yes.
basically. No?
Yes. Now, I mean, your approach in your cookbook was to try to teach people in Venezuela about these things through writing a popular. I mean, you have all that information.
Yeah.
About
I think
prevention.
in our book we have attempted to conscientize people about the things they should avoid consuming because of their harmful effects on health. And also we recommend the things that should be consumed. And, you know, too many people ask us, you know, I cannot eat cheese, I cannot eat meat, I cannot drink milk, so what am I going to do? I'm going to starve. And we tell them, you know, listen, there are only 5 types of basic meats, and there are 80,000 types of edible vegetable species. Think of it. And in fact, the whole world, you know, grows basically 150 of these, you know, thousands
Of
of
all
species.
of these thousands
and
of
most people
species.
feed only on about 20 species. So there's a big, you know, tremendous potential there, you know, to increase the food supply, you know, to eat healthy at the same time. And we also recommend that people should consume the various parts of the plants, not just the most popular parts, but consume the roots,
The whole
the
plant.
stems, the leaf, the seeds, the
I see.
Fruits and flowers.
the fruits and
I see.
flowers, and by doing so, you are going to be ingesting a balanced set of nutrients, because Mother Nature is very wise. The plant stores in each of its main constituent parts, the basic nutrients according to the metabolism and according to the functions of this specific part. So we don't believe also in this, our approach is a very much a nonsensical, how do you say?
Yes, nonsensical.
Nonsensical approach. We don't believe
Yes.
in these complex, tables and theories of nutritionists, that
Yes.
in the end up confusing people about, calories, balancing things here and there. But,
cholesterol, and everybody's going
we
crazy.
just go
Yeah.
for common sense approach, a common sense approach, common sense principles, basically mirroring the way of nature.
Well, you really, both of you seem to be saying what I've sometimes suspected, and that is that way back at the early days of the human species, hunter-gatherers probably had a wonderful diet. I mean, 85% of it was going around grazing on berries and fruits and leaves and all. So we must have had a very balanced diet
Naturally.
in those.
Our earliest predecessor was actually a gatherer, no? More than a hunter.
For more than a hunter.
Yeah, it has been anthropologically proven.
Uh-huh.
But then the glacial age, no, and these major disturbances came, and he was deprived from his usual, the usual
Surroundings,
crops.
habitats.
He picked on, he fed on, and he had to resort, to survive.
To killing animals.
To killing animals, but it's really a very recent,
Carnivore.
consumption pattern in our long story of evolution. So it's been almost forced into our nature.
And so would you both say that the human body is really not designed to deal with meat?
Absolutely no.
Because, I mean, I look
There's
at my cat and
plenty of anatomical evidence.
Really?
The way your teeth are, are built, the way your stomach, intestinal tract, goes. There are
we're
many.
going to be very unpopular with the meat industry.
Well,
It does harm.
we are pro,
Yes.
good healthy things.
Yes,
We are not
yes.
against.
So
Any-
let's look now at all of these plants, these 80,000 species of plants, which we've now narrowed down to about 5 for our diets. How do we enrich our diets, again, getting back to all of these plants, and how do we make sure that we preserve them like all these medicinal plants in the rainforests?
Precisely, that's one of the biggest problems we have. In the tropics, where we get more than 80,000 species, plant species,
2/3 of the plant species of the world. Most of the plant
Yes.
species of the world. Yeah.
it's about 70% of the 70 to 80% of the species we get in the
A
tropics.
treasure house of food resources.
So the people around there, they know how to make use of the roots, shoots, leaves, flowers, fruits and seeds according to the seasons. They select certain plants in some seasons, whereas in other time they do not use at all. For example, the Aborigines.
In Australia?
No, in Venezuela
in
we have.
Venezuela.
Have origins in
Oh, Venezuela.
So they use, for example, one palm, they take juice out of the fruit, they take the seeds, kernel, and take oil out of it. They use the leaves for thatching, the tender leaves, they make into fine artwork for basket making and other things. And the trunk of the palm, they use it for building materials. In fact, they use that palm for each and everything, including they take out starch from the central portion of the stem and they eat it. After that, they make some larvae grow there, eat that larvae also.
How about that?
See, they make use of
Everything.
that plant for their living, their food, their recreation, their art, for everything they make use of the.
It is amazing, isn't it, what some of
See?
these cultures can do.
Because this I am citing just how people who live in that area, they dominate the technology adequate to them, which will not spoil the surroundings.
Yes.
So it is a safe technology.
Now, since we're running out of time, I wanted to ask you both another question, and that is, how much of our health problems do you think are now coming from the polluted environment, the pesticides, the dirty air we breathe, the, contaminants in the water?
Naturally, because our body is made up of water, air, and food we eat. So unless we take good food, clean food, we cannot expect our body
We
to
have
be
clean
better.
air, clean water. 80% of the cancer, diseases comes from environmental
Problems.
That's well documented. So I think environment does have a tremendous weight on our health, and it has to be taken into account by health policies.
Yes.
Again, I would say not only the outer environment, inner environment also we have to take care of it,
Yes.
because our descendants will suffer.
Yes. Well, I've been involved a little bit with the World Health Organization that you were mentioning. You were at their meeting earlier. And, they have this program called the Healthy Cities Program.
They have traditional
Yes,
medicine.
and what they're trying to do is to teach people that it's just as important to have a healthy city to live in with clean air to breathe and good water supply as it is to do anything else. So this is a big shift that's happening, isn't it?
This is a big shift, and I think to me the health should be the main yardstick to measure development, to measure really how societies and countries are doing, not the gross
Yes.
national product or all of these economicist and materialist indicators that we have had so far.
Yes, yes.
Rethinking is really important in healthcare.
So we're going to rethink the whole structure of healthcare, and we're going to restructure the whole
Basic
apparatus
concepts.
so that it will cost less and people will be fitter and healthier
For the next century.
for the next century.
That's it.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And until next time, this is Hazel Henderson. Thank you for watching.